Hello, good morning. Well, it's morning for me. I'm not sure if it's morning for you right now, but it is morning for me. And it is time to film our August wrap up. So I had a kind of slow month for me. I feel like I was put in a little bit of a reading slump, and I read 7 books. So what we're gonna do this morning, I am gonna go for a walk. I'm at a local park. I'm gonna go for a walk, try to clear my head a little bit and think about the books that I've read and reflect on what I want to say about them. And then I will sit down, I'll find a picnic table or something, sit down and then go over them all with you. So let's go.
It is time to recap August. I had another great August with some big news, and I'm going to say that I read 5.5 books in August. I say half because we're recording a little early. Amanda has to go out of town and she can't edit in the last few days of August. And I'm currently reading, which I know I'll get done in a day or two. I'm currently reading a very important book, and not just important because I've been wanting to read this for, I can't even tell you how many TBRs, and I've dragged it, I think, into 2 months now. And the importance of this book is this is number 31 books read for this year. For me, that's a lot. And to prove that, last year in 2022, the total number of books I read for the year was 31. Amanda, celebratory some kind of image would be great right now. So number 31, we have, as you guys know, 3 more months in this year. Most likely, I could potentially read 50 books this year. Amanda, you can also do some kind of applause thing. Because there are people out there that I think their lone job, and I wish I could get paid to read, but their lone job is to read books, and they read like 1 a day, if not 2 a day. I don't do audiobooks and I don't do ebooks. I don't know if ebooks technically makes it go faster, but I don't do either of those. I'm always doing print books, and I don't know if that's slowing me down. It's mostly my full-time 40-hour-a-week job that's slowing me down. So I was very happy that I am in number 31, and I'm about, it's like 100 pages into this, and I'm already admiring how much Catriona Ward writes. And this one is about a mother and daughter. Well, it's a woman who's married and has 2 daughters. One of them, Callie, she has some concerns about. And something happens with Callie and how her mom perceives happened with their younger daughter. And I think she thinks Callie is a danger. So she takes her home to this ranch house that I think she grew up on, because she mentions being homeschooled there with her father, but they call the house Sundial. And it's a very slow burn horror novel where you don't know what her intent is at taking her daughter there. Her daughter's 12 in the book, but the daughter is giving very much like Damien Omen child vibes, collecting bones and talking and whispering to things that aren't seemingly there. So far I am loving this book, and it will be done officially in August as well.
Okay, so as you guys heard, I read 7 books, and the first book that I want to mention is a book that I put on my September TBR. So you're probably thinking, Amanda, you had a book on your September TBR, but it's also in your August wrap-up. Well, let me explain. I recorded my September TBR on Saturday, and I started this book on Sunday. So I'm including it in this wrap-up real quick, and that is Delicate Condition by Danielle Valentine. And I'm just throwing this in here real quick because I actually DNF'd this book. I read to page 151, and the writing of the book was okay, but I wasn't really enjoying myself. I wasn't really having a great time reading this. This book was promoted as The Push Meets The Silent Patient, and I loved The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I think that's how you say his name. Probably not, but we'll just go with that. And so I had really high hopes for this book, and 151 pages is probably like 40% in. So I got almost halfway maybe, and I just was not, this was not even comparable to The Silent Patient, and I wasn't having a good time. I usually don't DNF books, but this year I'm gonna DNF books if I am not enjoying them, because there's so many books that I want to read. I don't want to waste precious reading time forcing myself to finish books just because I started them. I am a completionist, and I do want to finish books once I start them, but I'm trying to let go of that this year and just DNF books that I didn't like, and this was just one of them. The writing was good, like I said. I am not knocking the author, the writing. The story was good. It's just not really what I was expecting. So there we go. I'm gonna DNF it. But I guess if you really like horror books, on the cover it says The Feminist Update to Rosemary's Baby. So it is going in the horror direction. The first half of the book that I've read wasn't very terrifying, but I had a feeling it was going that direction, some kind of supernatural horror. So there you go. If you're into that, then this is probably gonna be a good book, but I had to DNF it.
So the other books that I have read in August are Divine Rivals and Wishing Game. I'm saying these together because we do have vlogs for both of these. I have warned you guys in another video, I am having a year where I am not only reading a lot more than I typically am, but I keep finding books that I'm absolutely loving and giving 5 stars to. And one of them is The Wishing Game. Absolutely loved this book so much. And Divine Rivals, which is a YA science fiction fantasy, very similar in how I felt about Fourth Wing. I wouldn't say they're similar in how they're written. Both of them are science fiction fantasy, but this one gives very much like historical, it gives World War I vibes, but it's actually a God's War, and there's magic involved, magical typewriter involved. And if you want to know more about our thoughts on both of these, I know Amanda can magically put the link right above my head. She can put it in the comments for you guys to click on. So if you want to hear more about these, check those out.
The next book I'm going to mention very briefly is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Jen and I already have a reading vlog on this book. We both loved this book, and the ending of this book got us both. It drove us both nuts, and I have pre-ordered The Ruthless Vows, which is the next book, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. It comes out the day after Christmas, so we will be doing a follow-up vlog to Ruthless Vows, which is the second book coming out in this duology at the end of this year.
Right after I read The Wishing Game at the beginning of the month, Shari LaPena, and I didn't have it on my TBR for this month, but this one came out, and I'm a huge Shari LaPena fan, and I had to pick it up. And this one was, again, very good. Couldn't put it down. I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 4. And just because I feel like it's starting to get, the formula starts to get tired after a while. I think I need something else to grab me when it's a psychological thriller. There was a little bit of a twist that I don't feel like she has done before, and I don't want to give that as a spoiler, but it wasn't it didn't turn out how I thought it would. I don't want to say anything else because I think it'll give it away. But the basic storyline for this one is about William Wheeler is having an affair, and it's with a neighbor. And she breaks it off with him one afternoon. He goes home. He tends to have a temper. He has a young daughter, Avery, who tends to act out. And he takes out some of the anger on her, but you don't really get the full picture. And then you rotate through perspectives of a lot of different people to see who is lying about what really happens, because Avery ends up missing. And that's all I will say, because if I say anything else, it's going to ruin it. And I feel like it was a pretty good twist. I don't really feel like I saw it coming. So I felt like this was a good book by Shari Lapena. If you love psychological thrillers and have not read Shari Lapena, I would highly recommend you pick her up. You could start here. Couple Next Door is another good one. Stranger in the House was the very first one I read by her, and I absolutely love that book. So she has a lot to choose from, but this is definitely something, if you like those kinds of books, you would enjoy, for sure.
Next two books that I am going to mention are ARC copies that I received. I will be doing ARC reviews on them, even though they're both already released, and that is The Handyman Method by Nick Cutter and Andrew F. Sullivan. This book was really good. It is gory and graphic in some scenes. But this is a great book. My ARC review will be posted of this book, so if you're interested in this horror novel, then please check out my ARC review. Subscribe to the channel. It will be posted later. And Dark Corners by Megan Golden. I really liked this book. I did read The Night Swim in preparation for Dark Corners, because this is the second book of the Rachel Crall series. And it's not necessary. I don't think you have to read Night Swim in order to read this book, but you guys, this book was so good. I enjoyed this book much more than Night Swim. I was kind of putting off reading this book because Night Swim was okay, but it wasn't like great and gripping. But this book sucked me in. I read it so quickly. It was easy to read, easy to fly through. You're following Rachel Crall, who's a podcaster, and she is in Florida to help an FBI agent solve a murder mystery crime, and he suspects that a criminal that has already been arrested and is in jail currently of the crime, but he's not been convicted of the murder crime. So he's trying to prevent this inmate from being released and catch him in the murder, but so far he's got nothing. The inmate's gonna be released in a few days, and Rachel comes in to help him solve this murder mystery. Great book. Full ARC review coming soon.
My other girl who I absolutely love in psychological thrillers is Alice Feeney, called Good Bad Girl, and I absolutely love her books too. Actually, I don't remember what I rated this one, but it was true to her form. It was very strange. I either gave this like 4.5 stars. I know you can't do the half stars on Goodreads. I don't believe I gave this one 5 stars, though I really enjoyed it. It also kept me riveted. I didn't see a few of the plot twists. There was one that my jaw dropped, and I feel is in the vein of Frida McFadden. So this is another one. If you have not read Alice Feeney, especially if you're tapping into psychological thrillers, you definitely need to check her out. She has a few other ones too that are really good. The first one that I read by hers that I loved was His and Hers, but I think my favorite of hers remains Daisy Darker. Daisy Darker, I absolutely love. That twist at the end, one of my favorite, I would say that twist at the end of that one is probably the best twist of any psychological thriller that I've read. And that's a big statement because I read a lot of psychological thrillers, and I'm not sure why Daisy Darker doesn't get read more. I don't feel that whole book was as riveting as some books, and maybe that's why it started to really heat up at the end, and some really surrealistic and I would say unbelievable things happen. She definitely stretches what could happen. And I tend to like those books though. I'm not looking for a book to be realistic. You want to get lost in a story that's not about the mundane everyday stuff. So when people say things like, oh, that's not realistic, or the whole point of reading is so that we get lost in those kinds of things. I know there are books out there. I think a lot of romances tend to be more on the realistic side about relationships and finding someone, and that hasn't really interested me, at least for reading purposes. But I tend to like things that seem a little impossible, and sometimes it gets frustrating to read some of those books because you're trying to determine exactly what's going on. But I think a really good book pushes the boundary so that you are thinking more about whatever subject it's happened to be writing about. So that's why I like those kinds of books. The premise of this one, you see the story through 4 different women. And at the beginning, it doesn't say whose perspective you're reading, but there is a baby that gets kidnapped from a stroller in a grocery store. Fast forward 20 years, and you are brought into a story at a nursing home with an older woman that's 80 years old and one of the nursing home care workers. And you start to get bits of a story. And I'm trying not to say a lot of things because I don't want to give away the plot twist or the reason. I don't want to give away anything that would ruin this book if you plan on reading it. But you keep alternating through these women and you find out a lot of the story and how they're connected. And you don't really see it first because you keep changing perspectives. And I know there are people out there that don't like that device. It works well in some stories and some it doesn't. I felt like it worked really well in this story. And you get more and more of the story as you go through these women telling you pieces of their story. And I was really shocked by what you find out. But if you haven't read Alice Feeney, I think she is a perfect person to read. She just keeps me riveted, at least.
The next book that I want to mention that I read, I listened to the audiobook, and that is Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. Jen loved this book. She gave it 5 stars. She was fortunate enough to get an ARC copy, and she did a review. It has been posted on our channel. She did a review. It's been posted on the channel, so check it out. She loved the book. I didn't love the book as much as Jen loved the book. So I have read 2 Catriona Ward books so far, The Last House on Needless Street and Looking Glass Sound. And I'm not going to say I'm an expert in all things Catriona Ward. She has several other books that I'm so interested in reading, but I feel like she has a very unique style of writing. She writes about very unique and kind of unreliable main character point of views, and I feel like if someone blindly gave me a Catriona Ward book and just said read this, that I could tell she wrote it. I know that's going out on a limb a little bit, but her books are just so different than any other books that I've read. But great book. You're following an author who is older, and he had a traumatic experience as a child, and he wrote a book about this traumatic experience, and the book was stolen from him and published by a different author claiming it was his. And Wilder, who is the main author's name, tries to go out and write a different telling of the book. And you're just following Wilder and his friends and their journey through their lives. And if you guys have not read Catriona Ward and you like literary fiction or you like horror books, I would recommend you go out and pick up one of her books. I liked Looking Glass Sound more than Last House on Needless Street, so if you had to choose between the two, I would say go with Looking Glass Sound. I have not read her other books. I want to read Girl from Raw Blood, and I want to read Sundial, so I will give you guys updates if and when I read those books to see how they compare to the others, but she is just a phenomenal author. If you've not read her, go get one of her books.
Last but not least, this one I have been waiting for months, and I even used one of my new little bookmarks in it to write down some notes, because this one, where do I even begin with this one? I couldn't believe this book. I have a feeling this one's going to end up trending. I was on such a ride with this book. I couldn't put it down, for one. And yes, I gave it 5 stars. I don't know. So I just finished this yesterday, and I can't stop thinking about it, for one. I ended up talking, because no one I know has finished this one. I know a couple people I know, a couple of my friends are planning on reading this. They bought it. And I ended up talking to my boyfriend about it, because it's one of those books that you really need to talk out loud about. And I was explaining it to him, doing my best to explain it to him, and he ended up asking me questions, and we start talking about it, and I had a chance to really get out things that I wanted to talk about and thought about this book. So the only thing I want to say, because saying most anything would ruin this for anyone who wants to read this. So the premise that's written on the back, and it doesn't tell you anything past this, is there's a woman who goes on vacation on a cruise with her boyfriend. She'd been with him a few months, and she's really excited. It's their first really big trip. And when she wakes up the next morning, they have one night that they're on this cruise, and when she wakes up the next morning, he's not in the bed. She doesn't see anything unfamiliar in the room, but he's not anywhere in their cabin suite. She goes out into the hallway. Her assumption is maybe he had gone to get something to eat. But she goes out into the hallway, and she notices that all the other cabin doors are open. And as she goes down the corridor, she doesn't see anybody. And she goes through the whole ship, and she can't find anyone. And I almost said something, but I'm not going to spoil this. So after that, I don't know what I thought was going to happen, but you find out something shortly thereafter. It wasn't what I expected, and I was a little disappointed at first, because I thought, oh, it's not what I thought it was going to be. Well, we'll see how this goes. But then it just kept giving me things to keep me riveted. And it has one of those endings that will not only stay in your mind, but it's just crazy. This whole book. So since I couldn't really explain this whole book, what I did was I had marked some things on that little bookmark tab that I had gotten. And these are the words that I wrote down that I would describe it as, if I just wanted to give some words that give nothing about the plot. So I said shocking, horrifying, fast-paced, thrilling ride, surprising, and ends on a cliffhanger. And when I put horrifying, I actually think for parts of this book, I don't know what qualifies something as being a horror book, but I honestly think that this was just a horror book to me. You just read some things that I just felt were horrifying. So if you like that kind of thing, if you like to be surprised on a thrilling ride, very much tinges of horror, this is the book for you. It's a shocking book, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I think I'll leave it at that. So that is what my August looked like. And if you guys have read any of those, especially anyone who has read this one, feel free to not comment and give spoilers, but we do have an email listed on our page, and I would love for anyone to give me their thoughts on this one, because it's just something you want to talk about. And I hope everyone else had a really successful August and are reading something that you love. Please tell us in the comments if there's anything you think we should read. So look out soon. We're going to do vlogs on Frida in September. We have our 5-star question mark read that we're going to unveil in September. And I have other things that I'm going to be reading in September. So I'll catch you at the end and let you know where I end up. And do you guys think I'll end up at 50? Maybe. Let's hope so. Until next time.
The last book on my August wrap-up is going to be The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This book was a little bit of a disappointment to me, I'm not gonna lie. I wanted to love this book so much. The premise of this book is amazing. There's dark academia, there's competition. Only 5 of 6 contestants are going to get into this elite society, and the 6th person is going to be left out. The fate of that 6th person, you're not sure of what's going to happen. It is a magical society, so there's magical elements. There's just everything that I love about books. There's a little bit of an enemies to friends kind of vibe going on here. Potentially romance, I'm not sure, but definitely like enemies to friends. And everything that I would normally have liked in a book was this book. However, about, I don't know, halfway through the book, I started losing interest. I just really didn't like any of the characters in this book. There's a lot of politics. It's kind of like Big Brother. If you had to, if Big Brother contestants were competing to get into a secret magical society. And, so I do love the politics, the backstabbing. You don't know who to trust. But I really was not invested in any of the characters. I really didn't like any of the characters. I started out liking the main character, but towards the end I just was like, meh. And I don't really care to continue it. I'm probably not gonna read The Atlas Paradox, which is the next book in the duology or the series, just because I'm just not interested anymore in the characters. And again, like I talked about earlier, I'm just going to start DNFing books if I'm not interested or don't have a good time, because they have so many other books that I want to get to. Okay, that is it. That is all of the books that I read in August. I did battle a bit of a reading slump, and I'm going to blame Rouge by Mona Awad on that, because that book put me in a rabbit hole of research and looking into this and meanings of that, and so that book put me in a little bit of a reading slump, even though Jen and I enjoyed the book and we did a reading vlog on it, so go check it out if you're interested. Other than that, stay tuned for more videos coming out. Please click that subscribe button and the notification bell so you'll know when more videos are posted.